Hello there beautiful, welcome back to my channel. How's it going? My name is Joesephyr and today we're going to be covering how I'm approaching leveling to Omni 90 in Endwalker for Final Fantasy XIV now that we've had 6.0.5 and 6.0.1 and the various buffs that we got to XP in dungeons and the like, and basically how to enjoy doing all of the leveling for various jobs without burning out too hard, because I see a lot of various different guides that say hit Bozja really hard, hit dungeons non-stop, things like that, and I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the stuff that's been put out there purely for the sense of enjoying the journey to Omni 90 as opposed to being the first person to do it, because let's face it, there's always going to be somebody that accomplishes Omni 90 quicker than you or I. So if you'd like to know more about my methods of how I'm leveling, because I like to think I'm doing a pretty good job of getting towards that without burning myself out too heavily, then of course as always stay tuned and keep on watching. Of course, as always, don't forget to check out all of my social media links down in the description box below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord, and Patreon. Twitch, I stream all sorts of different things, almost always Final Fantasy related, whether it be Final Fantasy XIV, Dissidia, Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, the mainline Final Fantasy games, and pretty much all things Final Fantasy. So definitely come along and check me out over on Twitch through the link in the description box below if you'd like to come and join me. Over on Patreon, I have a massive amount of thanks to give to all of my patrons, of course, for supporting this channel, but I always give a shout out to one of my patrons every time I release a video, and today that person is going to be Quetzalma, who has been a supporter of the channel for a long time in other ways and has recently joined up on my Patreon, so a massive thank you goes out to you, honestly, for just being someone to talk to and bounce ideas off of. So the fact that you're a part of Patreon means a huge amount to me as well. And before we go into the video, I do want to kind of just say that I'm not quite Omni 90 yet, although I'm getting there quite quickly, and I wanted to just say that I am currently a White Mage / Sage main, because depending on which kind of content we're going into, whether we want a regen healer or a shield healer, I like to kind of pick up one or the other. But I've been learning all of the jobs as best I can, and another thing that we're going to talk about as we go through this video is going through the jobs and trying to learn what they're all about as you're leveling, so that you're not just kind of leveling for the sake of doing it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here is going to be dailies. Now I know that you guys are probably thinking this is the most obvious thing on the planet when it comes to doing leveling for various jobs, but there are certain things that I wanted to talk about with dailies with regards to what to do while you're queuing for them, as well as which ones you want to prioritize when it comes to leveling things, especially DPS jobs, because obviously DPS queues tend to be longer than that of healer or tank, certainly not tank. Now, main scenario. Main scenario is an obvious one for a lot of people, but main scenario is one I would prioritize if you have a decent amount of time to spare while playing the game. Like if you've only got 1 or 2 hours to play the game, then you might actually want to prioritize some of the others, particularly leveling and frontline. And I'll get to frontline in a moment because I think it is severely undervalued when it comes to this game, and I only started doing it in like the middle of Shadowbringers when I was like, oh wow, this is a massive thing. But with main scenario, obviously there's 2 scenarios you can get, either Castrum Meridianum or the Praetorium. And honestly, when it comes to Castrum, you often find that people, wrongfully I might add, tend to jump out of Castrum the second they see it. They'll take the half-hour penalty hit, and then you see the whole party fall apart, and then people try again and try and get into Praetorium. This is unfair for a couple of reasons, because, you know, bear in mind that main scenario is made in order to help people who haven't actually done those quests yet in order to actually get them finished so they can progress with the story. So can you imagine being a first timer going into Castrum and then every time you go in there people just leave every 5 seconds? It's not very fair on them, so do try not to do that if you can help it. But there is a reason why people do that. Like Praetorium is maybe 40-45 minutes worth of your time, and it'll probably get you around 90% of your next level, whereas Castrum is 25 minutes, as long as it all goes correctly, and only gives you about 55-60% of a level. So obviously one of them is preferable. And because of the wild variance in the time you spend doing them, you're not going to sit there and hope for Castrum and like cut your time short when perhaps you're meeting up with a party to do something else, or you're just doing stuff outside of real life in order for you to then go, uh-oh, I've got Praetorium, now I have to try and rush and change my plans and everything. So for that reason, I wouldn't necessarily prioritize a main scenario first. If you've only got a limited amount of time, my honest suggestion would be to do leveling, because it's only 15 minutes around that area and you're going to get like 50-60% of your level, and frontline. Frontline is incredible for leveling. It's about 15 minutes again, like leveling, and you get a huge chunk of experience for doing it. And while I wouldn't recommend that people not care about what they're doing at all when they go into Frontline, it's very important that you actually pay attention to the fact that you don't actually have to win in order to get that experience. So you don't have to care all that much, but just bear in mind that there are people who are in Frontline that do care about winning because they want the rewards for getting lots of wins in Frontline, like the mounts, etc. And have a bit of fun with it. Like, I don't particularly enjoy PvP in games like this at all, but if I'm going to go into this kind of thing, then I'm going to try and have a bit of fun, and maybe I might have some by accident. In terms of XP alone, while you have those three main ones that you kind of want to prioritize as best you can in order to get the most experience for the time you spend, I would say that Alliance Raids was also very good because of the fact that you don't have to spend a huge amount of time in there and you get a decent amount of XP. And be sure to greed on all of the gear that comes along, because you can always desynth it, use it for yourself, use it for glamours. There's some really nice ones in some of those, like the Evilise ones, or even some of the Nier stuff. If you're between 80 and 90, you might get up some nice stuff while you're at it. And then the others, like 50, 60, 70, normal raids and trials, I would consider very low priority because they don't give you a huge amount of experience. And certainly if you're between level 80 and 90, the number of times where I've gotten something like Warrior of Light, or something like that from Shadowbringers, where people don't really know the mechanics very well, and then it ends up taking 15, 20 minutes because people keep wiping, for you to get maybe 5%, maybe 20% of a level, it just doesn't seem worth it. And at that point, you could then just go into dungeons and spam that instead, or go do one of the various other methods of leveling that there is. If you want some things to bear in mind while you're doing your dailies and while you're kind of spreading out, whether you're using jobs or 81, 82, whatever level they might be, 40, it doesn't really matter. There are things that you can do whilst queuing, as I said, particularly if you're a DPS class, that will help you along with your leveling. So Beast Tribes will always be really helpful, even between 80 and 90. I find myself doing the Pixie Beast Tribes, even on characters that are above level 80, because every little helps when it comes to XP, and you're likely to get like 10 million, like 10 minutes worth of a decent amount of XP, like 1 million XP, something like that, that you can work towards a mount if you haven't got it already from the Pixies. Lesser Beast Tries will get you less XP depending on what level you are, but as long as you're within the right 10 bracket of levels, so 70 for Kojin, or 60 to 70 for Kojin and Ananta, things like that, then you can get a decent amount of XP for doing it. Hunts are also really good as well. You can get up to 3 million XP every day whilst you're waiting for your queues to go off, and that you can just pick up here, there and everywhere. So getting those consolidations and multitasking whilst you're queuing for stuff, as a matter of fact, I could probably make an entire video of things that you can do while you're queuing or waiting for your party to get ready, all sorts of things like that that you can be doing in order to level up your Disciple of War or Magic efficiently. And then Wondrous Tales. Wondrous Tales is really important as well. Every week you can go and get Wondrous Tales from Chloe Alipo over in Idleshire that you want to kind of check off as you go. But again, in terms of not burning out, you don't have to do this on the day you get it. You have a whole week and you have a load of dungeons that you'll be doing through your dailies by leveling just naturally, that you'll probably be able to tick off a load of these anyway. And if you get other people that haven't done those dungeons before, you'll get second chance points as well. So you might find that if you get the dungeon that you're already doing, then you can always use a retry point and then get the same dungeon twice that you get just by doing it naturally. Now I'm going to talk about something that I've done practically none of when leveling, and that's Bozja's Southern Front and the Save the Queen gear, the Save the Queen quest line and things like that. I don't particularly enjoy fate grinding within Bozja or Zadna purely because A, there are loads of people doing it, and sometimes if you don't join a party quick enough, you'll often find that by the time you get to the next fate, it's already been cleared, so you have to be on the ball, super efficient, and it can get really, really quickly dull and uninteresting when you're just cycling through the same fates over and over again, and it's not chill like fates in other places because you have to keep up with everybody else doing them. As time progresses, this is going to be less of a factor, but then you have the opposite problem, where if there aren't enough people doing leveling in Bozja, then they're going to take longer to do. do, and because your level's synced to 80, you're not going to be getting an awful lot out of it in terms of being able to relax, have something else on in the background, watch a bit of TV, like Praetorium levels of chill. You're not going to get that as much. So not only that, but you don't get an awful lot out of it outside of XP. I've seen a lot of videos, like I've watched a few, where it's like if you were sort of balls to the wall, going in for XP and XP only, Bozja is the quickest way of getting it. And I can see that. I can understand why that might be a thing. However, when you're fate grinding in other places, you get bicolor gemstones. When you're dungeon grinding in any dungeon, you get gear that you can desynth. You can get glamours, things like that. There's lots of other methods, like even Wondrous Tales. If you can get 3 lines on Wondrous Tales, then you've got the ability to pick up an ornate piece of gear, which for savage raiding and stuff like that at this point in time is worth an absolute fortune, or one of the mounts that you could then sell for an absolute fortune. Gil is something you can earn in various different ways, whether it be through fate grinding for bicolor gemstones, which will get you bicolor gemstone vouchers, which you can sell if you've maxed out your shared fates, or you can get materials that you can sell to crafters that will help them out. There's lots of bits and pieces you get in addition to XP through all of the other things, not to mention all the rewards for being adventurer in need in your dailies. But in Bozja, everything you get is restricted to Bozja, unless you're already doing a resistance weapon, at which point you'd need to be doing other things within Bozja anyway, like Delubrum Regine, Castrum, Dalriada, all stuff that people aren't really doing anymore so that they can focus on the fates. So it all kind of feels like a means to an end that doesn't really go anywhere. Now, if you do want the ultimate sort of chill experience, maybe you get a couple of friends together, you'll often find this in Party Finder, certainly early on in the game, because people are kind of building up, is Fates in everywhere else. Now, I've done a lot of my early leveling in Fates, so like 80 to 81, 80 to 82, things like that, because you get like roughly 200 to 300 XP, 200 to 300,000 XP per fate, depending on whether you're within the right margin of level, matching up to where you should be, whether it be in Labyrinthos, Thavnair, Mare Lamentorum, etc. As long as you're kind of a similar level to that, you'll get a little bit more XP than if you did otherwise. But if you are going somewhere that you are lower level than, like for example, I went to Area 6 and did a lot of leveling from 80 to 81 just because I wanted the shared fates done, and I actually found that I got a fair amount of experience even though I wasn't the correct level. So I got a lot of that done and got the shared fates done at the same time, which then made me Gil because of bicolor gemstones. And you can see where I'm going with this, is that it's all about kind of consolidating your time in a way that doesn't feel too strenuous, allows you to learn the jobs because you're leveling them at the level they're supposed to be at, as opposed to being restricted to 80 in, say, Bozja or anything like that, or even like 50, etc. in dailies. But if you're doing fates, then you're playing it at the level you're actually at, and therefore able to discern whether or not the job is going to be for you going forward. And then the last thing that I want to mention is going to be spacing your leveling out. Now, I kind of spread my levels across multiple jobs. Other people may want to focus them one at a time. I kind of wanted to build everyone up to at least 81, which I did through shared fates, so that I could then spend the dungeons, the main scenario, the percentage-based XP gains from things like dailies, Wondrous Tales, etc., on jobs I had that were at a higher level, so that it was easier for me to kind of round everything out. But there's no wrong way to go about building up your XP and your leveling. If you're even looking to go for Omni 90 like I am, then you can just do it at your own pace. I've been doing it on a daily basis, but I haven't been spending all of my time in FF14 leveling and solely leveling. There are people who are Omni 90 already that have got all of that done out of the way, but I've been able to get my crafters done. I've been able to like actually gather and craft stuff so that I could sell stuff when patch day came around for 6.0.5. I've been able to keep on top of the raids that have come out this time around. There's lots of bits and pieces that you don't have to do and make a beeline for it to get to Omni 90. Not only that, but sooner or later we're going to get beast tribes, and beast tribes are really good for XP, as I've stated earlier with the pixie beast tribes, but we haven't actually had the Endwalker ones yet. So my personal plan is to leave a couple of jobs that I'm perhaps less keen on, such as, like, I'm not a tank main, and even though I can abuse the fact that I can take tank queues through main scenario or any of the dailies that I've got time to do, I don't have to do that, because if I want to level up the beast tribes, I'm then doing two things at once, which is leveling those beast tribes by completing the quests while gaining XP and not wasting XP by already being Omni 90. It's like, yes, there's a level of achievement of getting it done early, but realistically, Who's it an achievement for? So all in all, in summary, all you want to be doing, if you've only got a couple of hours in the day, is spend your time on your dailies, first and foremost, and then make sure you get leveling, frontline, maybe main scenario if you've got time, and then if you don't have time for the rest, don't worry about it. You could actually spend your already level 90s on trials, normal raids, if you wanted to get the tomestones from it instead of the XP, because you're probably better off doing that. And then if you're a DPS queue, or DPS queuing, then you can take the time while you're queuing to do your hunts, to do your beast tribes, to maybe look at Wondrous Tales and what you do need to do. And if you are doing Wondrous Tales, maybe check off the box and not worry about getting it all done in one day, because if you go into the same dungeon twice, then you can end up using that to your advantage. Say it's level 50, level 80, etc. You can get away with doing that. And then just enjoy yourself doing it with fates as well. Like, learn the job, because there's no pressure on you to be able to have to perform in a raid, in like a big raid or even a big dungeon if you're not very confident in doing it. Fates are something you can kind of get to grips with as long as there's at least a couple of people doing them. You don't even have to be in a party for it. You can just kind of join in and make sure that you're getting XP that way, because the steady gain in Endwalker, compared to what it was in Shadowbringers, feels so much faster. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like the video, click the bell for notifications of future videos I might be making, and of course subscribe to the channel if you've liked what you've seen here today. And I hope to see you next time, and maybe we'll all be Omni 90 by 6.1, who knows, or maybe we're waiting for those beast tribes after all. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Take care.